Starting today, this place has become our home. We're kicking the old folks out. And of course, you too. I was woken up by a noisy commotion. When I rushed downstairs, I saw a bunch of rough-looking men carrying things into the house. I rushed towards the men and asked what was going on. The men retorted, "We're hired by your brother." I sank to my knees in shock. In contrast, my parents were calmly preparing to leave the house. Furthermore, for some reason, they had smiles on their faces. Why are they smiling at a time like this? As I showed a bewildered expression, my father spoke up. "Well then, should we crush them?" "What?" "My name is Chloe, 24 years old. I had dreamt of becoming a nurse since I was small. I entered a university to pursue nursing. However, during my 4th year of university while searching for a job, I changed my path. My mother had become physically disabled due to a traffic accident, and that led me to work at my father's company. My mother used to help my father's company as a clerk, but after the accident, she became disabled, and she could no longer do the same clerical work she used to do. I wanted to work while taking care of my mother, so I joined the company which my father runs, right after graduating from university. I spent days facing the computer, trying to adapt to my new job quickly. My mother apologized to me every day. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for ruining your dreams for the future. It's all because I ended up like this." Certainly, I had dreamt of becoming a nurse, but with my mother in this condition, I couldn't go and look for a nursing job. "Don't worry about it. I wouldn't want anything to happen to you in this state," I would cheerfully say to my mother, trying to lift her spirits with a bright voice every day. It was challenging, but the fact that we weren't in our old house anymore was the greatest relief. In that house, taking care of my mother would have been nearly impossible. It was deteriorating, falling apart everywhere. By the way, the place we're currently living in is a house that my father built anew. Speaking of my father, he used to be a stage actor in a theater company before I was born. He apparently worked diligently every day with dreams of making it big someday. However, when I was young, my father quit the theater company for some reason, started a small company along with his theater friends, and focused on that instead. Not long after that, his company started to thrive, and he went from living in a house where the roof was about to fall in to building a large mansion. My father was happy that it was spacious and would be ideal for a family to live in. However, on the other hand, he would say almost every day, "It would have been nice if he could have lived here with us." The he my father mentioned refers to my brother. After graduating from high school, my brother moved out of the house, and we had lost touch with each other. My brother is the opposite of me, who has introverted personality, and he is a cheerful man who says whatever comes into his head. My brother used to hang out with notorious troublemakers in the neighborhood. He caused trouble for various people and engaged in wrongdoing. He disliked his family, and I remember being ridiculed by him countless times. He particularly harbored a strong resentment towards our father. It seemed that the reason why my brother disliked his family, especially my father, was because he was being harassed at school for being poor. He hated our father with all his heart, saying that we were poor because our father was an unsuccessful theater actor, and that's why people made fun of my brother. My parents were always worried about my brother, who had disappeared without a trace. But to be honest, I felt more at peace without him around, and I think it's fine for him to remain out of contact. That's when it happened. One day, my brother with whom we had lost touch came to our house out of the blue. Beside him was a beautiful woman who looked like an actress. Apparently, my brother had gotten married at some point, without any of us knowing. "You guys are getting old, so I became worried and came back," he said. However, I distrusted my brother's concern for my father. He used to belittle people, and he was never the kind of person who genuinely cares about others. As I observed my brother cautiously, he looked at me and said, "You've grown up," with a deep sense of emotion. My brother's wife, a woman named Ruby, was smiling and commented, "She's such a cute little sister." Did she change my brother? While my brother might have changed due to marriage, I still believed he would eventually disappear again. That's what I was thinking. However, from that day on, my brother and his wife began to visit us frequently. "I just want to do something for you guys," he'd say. "My mother is also disabled." These were the words I could never have imagined coming from my brother. And Ruby, claiming she was used to it, began helping with our mother's care every day. Furthermore, my brother, who used to deeply resent our father, was now smiling at him. "To think you could build such a splendid mansion. You're amazing. I'm really sorry for being so selfish when I was young," my brother said. He truly seemed to have changed after he got married. Even when he came to our house alone, he'd find time to make phone calls to Ruby. She must be really important to him. At first I was in disbelief, but seeing the change in my brother made me happy. A few days later, when I returned home from work, I found numerous large boxes inside the house. My brother was busy sorting through them. When I asked, "What are these for?" he replied, "We'll need them in the future." Perhaps he brought things necessary for taking care of our mother? I thought that way at the time and didn't pay much attention. However, day by day, more and more boxes arrived. I thought he was bringing too many things, so I told him, "It's really thoughtful that you are bringing all this for Mom, but I think it might be a bit too much." Then my brother's expression suddenly changed. I knew this expression well. That's the look my brother used to have. "It's my family home, so I can do whatever I want, right? You've always been such a nag," he retorted. I couldn't hide my surprise. Suspicion began to well up within me again. My brother was grinning as if he'd won. Then my father came in between me and my brother. Now, just put the large boxes in the big room upstairs." I couldn't quite agree with our father's decision to side with my brother. With our father's permission, my brother continued to bring even more things into the house. Moreover, they started bringing not only my brother's belongings, but also Ruby's belongings into the house. "Sorry for all the stuff," she apologized. But gradually, even the big room upstairs became full with their boxes, and they started putting their stuff in my room without permission. A few days later, I was woken up by a noisy commotion. When I rushed downstairs, I saw a bunch of rough-looking men carrying things into the house. I rushed towards the men and asked what was going on. The men retorted, "We're hired by your brother." While I couldn't understand the situation, I looked around. I noticed my brother giving orders to the men. As I approached him, he laughed derisively, as if mocking me. "Starting today, this place has become our home. We're kicking the old folks out. And of course, you too." Just as I suspected, my brother hadn't changed at all. It seemed he had come back to our family home with the intention of taking it over from the beginning. I'm such a fool for easily believing. Even if I were to tell him to stop right now, he wouldn't listen. "Having old farts and an ugly girl like you in such a spacious mansion would be a waste, so we'll live here for you. Be grateful, will you?" I couldn't stand it when Ruby said this while smiling. Everything she did, even her assistance in taking care of our mother, was for this. When I realized I had been completely deceived, all I could do was to stand there in frustration. I thought my parents would surely be devastated by my brother's betrayal. But my father said something unbelievable. "I understand. We'll leave this house." What? Dad, you can't possibly mean that. If we don't say anything, we'll be driven out of our own home. My brother spat at me to get the hell out of there, despite my confusion, and he and Ruby were laughing hysterically together. Then, as if my brother had remembered something, he pulled out a piece of paper. "I would feel bad if you guys become homeless. A little bit of mercy for you." The paper he handed me had one-bedroom apartment written on it. He must have been planning to kick us out much earlier than I imagined. Shocked, I collapsed to my knees. Meanwhile, my parents were calmly preparing to leave the house. Following their lead, I got into the car, and my father started driving us to the apartment. However, my father drove past in front of the apartment that my brother had prepared for us. "We've passed the apartment." When I said to my father anxiously, my mother started laughing uncontrollably, and my father followed suit with laughter. Why are they laughing at a time like this? As I wore a puzzled expression, my father started talking. "They are really clueless. They have no idea about our plans. Well, should we crush them?" "What?" My mother seems to know what's going on and she's laughing. Amidst this, my father stopped the car in front of the grandest mansion I'd ever seen. "This is our new home. We've made it barrier-free so Mom won't trip, and the inside is designed to make it easy for her to move around on her own," my father explained. What's going on? I can't follow the conversation at all. It turns out that even before my brother came back home, my father had been building this new house for us. He had been aware of my brother's plans from the beginning as well. "I overheard their conversations. They were saying they'd make the house theirs and were being presumptuous," my mother explained. When my brother came home alone, he was often talking with Ruby on the phone, but it wasn't because she was important to him. They were actually coordinating their plans over the phone. Apparently, my mother had accidentally overheard their conversations. It seemed my parents had been waiting for an opportunity to strike back. So, that's what was going on. The pieces were finally falling into place. However, the question still lingered. This wouldn't change the fact that my brother and his wife take over our family home and live comfortably without any consequences, would it? A few days later, as we were enjoying the comforts of our new home, I received a large number of incoming calls from my brother on my phone. Nervously, I answered his call, and I heard a confused voice over the phone. In the background, I could hear Ruby's screams and chaotic noises. Amidst all that, my brother started yelling angrily. "What the hell is this? Explain it to me." Apparently, several rough-looking men had barged into the house, and they started taking things out of the house without permission. When I couldn't understand the situation and looked at my father, he wore a triumphant smile and told me to pass the phone to him. "Oh yeah, the house has already been sold. So, we have to move the stuff out of the house. We won't charge you for the movers. Just a little bit of mercy for you." "What? Sold? I haven't heard anything about that. Are you kidding me?" I heard someone else's voice behind my brother's yelling over the phone. "We'll start the moving process for your belongings," he said in a cheerful voice. It was likely one of the rough-looking men that my brother had mentioned. For some reason, I recognized that voice. Where did I hear this voice? I wondered, but now is not the time. "We've already sold the house we used to live in. What are you going to do about that? Where are we supposed to live now?" My brother's yelling left me utterly dumbfounded. What a self-centered person he is. This was truly a case of reaping what you sow. "You two are truly lousy parents. Do you even know what I went through when I was a kid? Other kids used to make fun of me every single day. It's because we were poor. It's because you were a fucking lame theater troupe member who dreamed of something that would never come true, Dad. Try acting like parents for once. You should give me a house or two." "Don't be ridiculous." I was about to retort, but before I could, my mother grabbed the phone. "Stop talking without knowing your father's feelings. Your father quit the theater troupe, gave up on his dreams. It was all for your sake. I had never seen my mother so angry. And I never knew the true reason why my father had quit the theater troupe either. It seemed that my father quit the troupe for my brother's sake. My father seemed to have realized my brother's struggles with bullying at school long before my mother and I did. When I look back at my father, who had been worried about my brother's well-being all the time, he probably sensed it from the subtle changes in my brother's expressions. He understood that our family's financial difficulties were largely due to his own inability to succeed as a theater actor. He didn't want to burden our family because of his own dreams any further. Of course, my mother told him that she didn't care about being poor and she wanted him to follow his dreams. I can infer this from the way she apologized to me every day after she required care. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for ruining your dreams for the future. It's all because I ended up like this. My mother apologized me every day for ruining my dreams, but perhaps she was apologizing to my father at the same time. My father quit the theater company, saying that spending time laughing with his family was more important than his dreams. However, he couldn't simply tell my brother and me the exact reason, as it might make us think that he sacrificed his dreams for us. I honestly don't know whether that was the right choice. However, my father made his decision based on his own thoughts. After leaving the theater troupe, he joined forces with his fellow troupe members and established a company that eventually led to building this grand house. My father mentioned it casually, but looking back, it's no piece of cake. He must have put in immeasurable effort while we didn't know anything. It was for the sake of the family that he was able to do that, wasn't it? I'm not going to believe that kind of story. Anyway, do something about it. Aren't you my parents? My brother refused to believe anything. My mother couldn't contain her anger and was about to say something, but I quickly hung up the call. There is no point in saying anything to my brother right now. About a month later, apparently my brother called my father for help. It turns out that Ruby's parents have always signed the contracts for all the places that my brother and his wife have lived in, for them until now. My brother hid the fact that he was unemployed, lied her parents that he works for a major corporation, and made her parents sign the contracts for expensive apartments for them. I could see how my brother was able to fool her parents from the fact that he used to hang out with the wrong kind of people. However, when everything came to light, it seems that her parents completely abandoned them, saying that they can't deal with my brother and their daughter anymore. My brother and his wife had lost everybody who would take care of them, even lost a place to live, and were helpless to do anything about it. If he thinks back on what he's done so far, he'll see that he deserves what he's got. He has caused us so much trouble, and now it's time for him to pay for it. My brother must be regretting by now. Our father, who had been so worried about my brother, pushed him away this time. Perhaps it was also to make him look back at his own actions. By the way, as for the rough-looking men who carried out my brother's and his wife's belongings, they were former colleagues of our father, people from the theater troupe. The voice I heard over the phone sounded familiar, and I wondered where I'd heard it, but not it makes sense. It was the voice I had heard when I was a child. I faintly remember the members of the theater troupe joyfully sharing their dreams with my father. When I went to thank the theater troupe members, once again, they told me that my father didn't abandon his dreams, but he chose to pursue new dreams instead. Seeing our parents smiling in the new house, I knew my father had no regrets about leaving the theater company. And they believe that someday, my brother will change his mind and reform himself. I really hope my brother will truly change next time. I'm hoping that one day that will happen.